Salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Podcast with Storm, a social with outcasts, praise reels, and all around nerds convene, talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host and nerdy co-host, aka Dolphin Peter, Dolphin L. Morton.
Hello, everyone. It was a very, very long weekend.
And I am your host, last time on Wannabe, the brains for pop culture. How's everyone doing?
I'm doing okay. Also, for the record, folks, my Ren fairing was not actually the reason we're doing this on Monday. That is down to Brainstormer's. Internet connectivity issues.
Yeah, last like 2 days or so, it's been kind of weird. Granted, today was somewhat explainable because I had a power shortage in my house, and I had to restart the power, obviously, but unplug and replug my router because apparently it doesn't start up correctly unless it's unplugged and plugged back in.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. But yeah, we're here. Podcast with yeah.
Although, in fairness, that did end up working in my favor, so either way it worked. And then it was quiet, oddly. Unless Brainstormer dropped already. Oh dear.
No, sorry, I'm back. So I had to help family member real quick.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be fully honest. There wasn't really a lot last week that really came up.
At least not show-related shenanigans. Oh dear.
No, it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's not often we have those kind of like slow, dull weeks.
It does seem to usually happen in September, though. Oddly enough.
Yeah.
I think because it's between the. I think because it's between the summer news cycle and the fall/Halloween news cycle. So
probably in the next few weeks we might be getting back, like maybe covering some old stuff I need to cover again. I don't know. We will discuss that in the coming weeks. So.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the stuff, actually, I'm not just playing. All the stuff this week is from Dalton. So,
Mm-hmm.
All right. In a second. There we go. It's from cinemablend.com. as Marvel's VFX staff seeks to unionize employees make claims about how the company has become McDonald's of content. It's by Eric Swan and published 7 days ago, which would be the 4th. What would that be?
The 28th of September? Or no, 30 days half September, so it'd be the 27th.
You mean August, right?
Oh wait, shit. Yeah. 30 days half. Okay, so no, it would be the 28th of August. Because August, I believe, has 31 days.
That was
So
you had a pretty much there.
I'm sorry, it's been a very, very long weekend.
All right. Honestly, no, I'm not even gonna dispute that. I expect that for me.
I mean to be fair, there was a whole bunch of shenanigans that needed to be dealt with in the last 2 days, and a scant few of them were fun. So
okay. I don't really say the title, but subheader that are 50 more people are looking to be represented by you. Okay.
I think it's a little bit silly to say the McDonald's of content.
I could I somewhat get that.
I mean,
I don't think it's I don't think it's an app description, but I think it's a description nonetheless.
Like I get what the VFX artist is saying. It's just like the downfall of the MCU has been fairly recent. Like I would argue it started maybe with what was the show after Loki? Was that Falcon and the Winter Soldier? I think so.
Falcon and the Winter Soldier was before Loki.
Are you sure? Because I thought it went WandaVision, then Loki, then Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then She-Hulk. But no, it was Werewolf by Night. Then it was Moon Knight, then Werewolf by Night, then She-Hulk.
See, I don't remember, man. I get your point. I get your point.
But for all that people flipped all sorts of shit, one, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness was actually pretty good. Two, the VFX were one of the best parts of Multiverse of Madness because they were replicating the Hammer horror-ish stylings of Mr. Sam Raimi, which
okay. To be fair, that is one of the very few examples in the more recent Marvel productions of the CGI actually looking good.
Right, but that's why I say it started with Falcon and the Winter. It started with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Well,
I mean, Eternals wasn't great, but that was mostly down to a shitty stylistic choice. And
Falcon and Soldier looked pretty good for the most part. Falcon and the Winter Soldier looked pretty good in terms of visual effects.
I mean, VFX wise, sure, but in terms of everything else, that's why I mark it as the beginning of the downturn, because No Way Home, whatever you may think of it, was a fucking juggernaut. Then Multiverse of Madness was still pretty damn good, even though people whine about it for obscure, stupid reasons. And
Um,
WandaVision was good up until episode 9, and then it completely shot the bed. And then Loki was sort of teetering on the edge of iffy for the most part. And then Falcon and the Winter Soldier completely and utterly shot the bed to the point that we created the Lionheart universe basically out of our desire to fix it. And then, of course, She-Hulk and Moon Knight was just sort of meh. Werewolf by Night was actually really freaking amazing, which just goes back to my claim that before you did multiverse shenanigans, guys, you should have done supernatural stuff. But what the fuck do I know?
Yeah, let's probably move on because we haven't even gone to the actual. Hold on. Alright, Hollywood finds itself in the midst of a period of time in which professionals within different facts of the industry are hoping for change. As we see, both the SAG, AFTRA actors and Writers Guild of America writers' strikes are in motion, and it's unclear as to when they might end. Visual effects workers are also aiming to improve the workplace, and that is especially true when it comes to those who work at Marvel Studios. I totally agree. I'm still not, I myself am not like, I'm unsure of unions, but.
Here's the thing. While the SAG-AFTRA strikes are mostly the result of nepotistic narcissists not realizing how good they had it and not being fit for the roles they had, and therefore I don't give a fuck what the writers and actors particularly want. The VFX artists, on the other hand, are as close to the working class as Hollywood gets, and they actually do have a claim for quality standards, as in they have legitimate cause to complain about mistreatment. And so when the VFX artists unionize, that I will be in favor of far more than I will be the rest of the strikes. It does strike me that they're probably looking to unionize just so that they can join the writers and actors. To which I would say to the VFX artists, they don't deserve your help. You guys actually have legitimate claims to victimhood. They have claims to nothing but not knowing how good they had it.
Right. Yeah, because we've covered this topic a couple of times before. And
it's a big freaking deal, so it's worth repeated coverage.
Yeah, it's been evidently clear from all like the stories and articles we've read on the subject that the visual effects artists are very like underappreciated, underutilized, and very much just constantly getting shaft.
They're like I say, they're as close to the working class as Hollywood really comes.
Right. Because, they're not unionized, so they constantly are getting underpaid,
their human rights really aren't respected. I mean, look at. I think a lot of people heard about what happened with Sausage Party.
I have not.
And apparently the VFX artists were actually locked into the place they were working on the VFX in until they finished. Yep.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, when we first talked about this subject, it was mentioned that visual effects industry was more or less pay by pay thing. It was freelance.
Correct. And I don't blame the VFX artists for wanting their fair cut when you consider how reliant upon CGI every major blockbuster is.
Yeah.
And no, that's not a bad thing. People who black-pilledly bitch about that constantly. CGI is an art form. It's a necessary art form for large-scale storytelling. Get over it.
Yeah. know?
Yep.
Visual effects workers are also aiming to improve the workplace, and that's specifically true when it comes to those who work at Marvel Studios. The employees are currently seeking to unionize and amid that campaign, there's some alleged details that on what it's like working for the entertainment company. They hold back their thoughts, with one person even weighing in on how the workflow has reportedly turned into the McDonald's content.
Again, that strikes me as a little bit uncharitable to Marvel. But then again, this is a VFX artist we're talking to here, presumably. And I'm sure from your end it does look like, because given that every shot takes days to perfect properly, or even get close to perfected.
It's this thing of what was it? I'm sorry. So the way the way I'm kind of interpreting like the statement of McDonald's of content is well, McDonald's is like fast food, right? Get in, get out.
Mhm.
And we've made this. We've talked about this before. It's like the constant rush to push something out, which does detriment a lot of things.
And the corresponding downgrade in quality that has nothing to do with the VFX artist and everything to do with the studios bitching at them to get it done too quickly.
Yeah, like what would be the best example in terms of? I mean, I want to say the final fight in Black Panther.
Well, I mean, there were quite a lot of. I would argue quite a lot of things in Quantumania is also a good example, but outside of Marvel, even compare the first 3 Matrix movies to the Matrix 4 that we're all pretending for our own sanity doesn't exist. Given it's because here's the ultimate calculation, folks. VFX as a technology have advanced in the 20 years since the third Matrix movie. VFX artist skills also probably have advanced in the 20 years since the third Matrix movie because more people are in the VFX industry and computers themselves are more user friendly than they were back in the late 90s and early 2000s. So the technology has advanced. The people's familiarity with the art form and ability to use the art form has also advanced, at least proportionately.
Right.
So we're left with a movie that looks like shit, even though the technology has significantly advanced in the last 20 years, and people's ability to use that technology has advanced in the last 20 years. So one variable is left. If it's not the people using the technology, and it's not the technology itself that is the problem, then we are left with the conclusion that it must, in fact, be a change in working conditions, which we can see because we know from behind the scenes information and from um, making of documentaries that people who were working on the original 3 Matrix movies were like given as much time as they possibly could have to try and get it right with the technology they had at the time. Whereas we also know that Matrix 4 was rushed out in the space of 6 months. So it's not the technology, it's not the people using the technology, it's the people overseeing the people using the technology and treating them like goddamn slaves. And therefore, the product suffers because while you could, in fact, get a better Matrix movie with today's technology if they gave them equivalent time, if you give them I'm going to be charitable and say a 10th or 12th of the time they had in the case of the original, then no matter how much the technology has advanced or people's ability to use the technology has advanced, it's going to look cheaper and more like it is the previous movie instead of the other three.
Yeah. Actually, well, I recently rewatched Pacific Rim. You know, one that came out in 2015.
Although to be fair, that's not quite a apt comparison because there was a lot of mixing of practical and CGI in that.
But the CGI still looks good even by today's standards.
Mm-hmm. Because it's Guillermo del frickin' Toro, and he knows, speaking of the mixing of CGI and practical, he knows how to do it well. I mean,
Yeah.
hell, Hellboy still looks pretty freaking great almost 20 years on. When did Hellboy 1 come out? The first one?
Hold on, let me look it up.
I want to say it was 2002. So yeah,
It was early 2000. I'm aware of that.
Because I know Hellboy Golden Army came out the same year as Dark Knight and Iron Man. Oops. I feel bad for Golden Army that it just came out at the exact wrong time. Because there should have been a third Guillermo del Toro live action Hellboy movie, but at least we have Blood and Iron and Sword of Storms, the animated ones, to tide us over.
2004.
Okay, so we're just shy of 20 years, 19 years then.
Well, also, I mean, I'm not going to presume, but again, it's like what you're saying about time and also possibly passion is also a factor.
Well, okay, that I'm not gonna do that to the VFX artists because in the case of Matrix 4, imagine it. You're a VFX artist. You're a professional VFX artist, probably with a programming background or something along those lines.
Well, okay, now
you're told you are gonna work on Matrix 4.
I don't. Maybe I misused the word passion, and I'm sorry for that. What I mean more so is effectively, and this is more relating to the Marvel visual effects. Somewhat possibly burnout, just given the workload. That's kind of what I meant more so than passion itself.
Okay, but even so, that I think just goes back to the time thing I was talking about because had they given them more time on each movie, it wouldn't be a burnout situation. It would be a you're able to give your all situation. But it's a combination. It's a combination of the time management thing and the slave drivingness of the studios that leads to, burnout.
Yeah, that's completely fair. Anyway, moving on.
Yep.
Right. Okay. As it stands, over 50 of Marvel's visual effects experts have taken steps to gain representation from the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees. Labor unions provide counsel for more than 150,000 tech workers and craftspersons across the industry. Ultimately, employees want better wages, more reasonable hours, and other benefits. I also want to point this out, like working overtime or anything on the project.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm sorry, the whole thing you said about like those sausage parties, about launching visual effects artists in the room so they can finish their work.
Yep. And they didn't get paid overtime for any of that either, by the way.
I can understand an individual VFX artist wanting to perfect or work on, like, on a personal choice or like work yourself to death kind of deal.
Mm-hmm. Because they're artists at the end of the day. They're, VFX just happen to be their medium, and there's probably, again, like I say, there's probably like a programming background or something akin to that in there as well.
So that I can understand, but that is a conscious, individual, free of will choice.
And it's something that it's something that the studios would, in a sane world, reward that artist for. Like that would be, if I were running a company and someone did that, that would be grounds for, okay, whenever promotions come up or whenever pay raises come up, your name goes to the top of the list. But no,
Yeah,
the studios apparently were so entitled that they expected that basically from everyone for free.
yeah. Um. Anyway,
Which is in, of course, the category of la bullshit.
moving on.
Hmm.
I IATSE visual effects organizer Mark Hatch tells IGN that the ongoing Hollywood strikes serve as a major source of motivation for his colleagues to ask for improved working conditions. Hatch, who said he worked 18-hour days as coordinator on WandaVision, also opened up about the Disney-owned studios' increased production output and how it's allegedly impacting the effect. When you're
Also,
training a
go
Well,
ahead.
I want to read this quote.
Hmm.
When you're turning a 90-minute movie into a 10-hour feature, basically, you're doing 10 times the amount of work within the same or even sometimes shorter period. Particularly from Marvel, we certainly have seen since COVID and streaming the amount of demand on our time and mental and physical health.
Hmm. And here's the thing, guys. Something to remember, that it can take anywhere between 6 and 12 hours to get one VFX shot right. Not scene, not sequence, shot.
Which is
Thus,
only a frame, I believe,
yeah.
or a few frames.
So, or it might sometimes include multiple frames. But point point being, 6 to 12 hours per shot, even if you were half-assing it, take that to however many shots with the effects in would be in something like WandaVision or something like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania or something like The Eternals or so on and so forth. Now again, I just want to be clear, there was nothing wrong with Eternals VFX. There was something wrong with Eternals aesthetic and creative conception. That I blame 99.9% on Chloe Zhao. Still look like shit because you shouldn't take the zaniest and most Kirby-esque of Jack Kirby's ideas and turn them into grounded art house schlock. But oh well. Moving on.
Right. And many of those who are Disney Plus subscription holders, no doubt know the platform has produced a plethora of Marvel Cinematic Universe related content since 2020. That's all arrived in addition to the typical slate of films that are released yearly. The IGN calculates Phase 4 has a total runtime of 50 hours, which amounts to more than the first three phases combined. The news outlet spoke with another employee, Gabrielle, the best, the best way, today, today, um, who's worked on MCU titles before and after the streaming service. Spider-Man Far From Home and Avengers Endgame crew member linking the more recent system of work to the aforementioned eatery. What you're expected to do each day and how shows are run, it definitely feels more like a conveyor belt nowadays than necessarily each project being given its own thought and time. As opposed
Well,
to
there
now where it's like, well, this is coming up and now we have to do this. It's coming up, we have to do this. It really becomes like the McDonald's.
Okay, well, here's the biggest problem. Hey, Disney, Marvel, why do you only have one team of VFX artists? Because it sounds like, and I could be misunderstanding or misquoting here, but it sounds like you have the same VFX artists working on every single project. And then okay, am I the only one who sees that, or am I going crazy? Because it sounds to me from what was just read out there that they're having the same team of VFX artists work on every single individual project. Which leads me to the question, why in God's name do you only have one team of VFX artists? Especially given that they're not unionized and can be done with freelance. Each individual project should have their own dedicated team of VFX artists, you assholes. That would solve probably about 80% of this problem.
Yeah, that
You
really does sound like a sweatshop kind of deal.
In a sane world, you would have the team that did Doctor, or hell, even if you couldn't afford to do a new team of VFX artists or an individual team of VFX artists for every single project, what you could do is you have each team of VFX artists work on the individual franchises. So the people who work on Doctor Strange's stuff work on Doctor Strange's stuff. The people who work on Tony Stark / Iron Man / armor related shit work on armor related shit, and so on and so on and so forth. If you did that, you could still maintain the stylistic consistency because they could compare notes still, but you would have a um a dedicated team for each individual style or each individual franchise of work. So you could have somebody come in for Doctor Strange 1 and then bring them back for Doctor Strange 2 and maybe WandaVision, but they wouldn't be busy dealing with also Loki and also this and also that and the other thing. The people who do the street level stuff do the street level stuff, and so on and so on and so forth. And there's also no reason you couldn't have multiple teams of VFX artists working at different stages, especially when you consider that VFX artists aren't particularly well paid because you're basically paying them pennies on the dollar, sweatshop wages anyway. And if you're running sweatshops with sweatshop wages, why not have multiples of them to actually share the workload on occasion? Like, if you're gonna be evil, could you at least be competently evil instead of incompetently evil morons?
Well,
Moving on.
seems to be conveyed that not enough time and care being put into each individual production, and that instead the goal is to get them completed as quickly as possible. While we can't completely substantiate the claim, it is true that some fans criticize the visual effects of some recent MCU offerings. 2022's Thor: Love and Thunder was chastised as this year's Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Another worker claimed the CGI for the prequel suffered because some of its resources had been allocated to Black Panther Wakanda, which actually looked really good, right? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Wakanda Forever didn't look too bad. I mean, there were a couple places where it was wonky, just like the first one, but it didn't look too bad. But again, getting back to my solution to this problem. Imagine how much easier this would be if there was a dedicated team whose job was solely, and I mean solely, to work on Thor and Thor-related franchise shit. Or hell, since Thor and Guardians wound up having a very similar aesthetic style when when Ragnarok started doing Thor right, you could have the same team working on the Guardians and Thor. That'd be fine. But why the hell are the VFX artists for Black Panther Wakanda Forever being asked to work on Thor? They're not even remotely related, except for maybe in the What If series um T'Challa became Star-Lord, but that was an animation. So there.
You know?
Yep.
Nonetheless, they seem to satisfaction with work in other films. During the review of the film, a Black Widow team member discussed the scene. They wish there had been more time to work. The alleged unsatisfactory working conditions for VFX artists reportedly aren't limited to those who just work on DC's. DC's The Flash was also critiqued for its CGI, which was addressed by the director. Okay. After its release earlier this summer, the visual effects artist contributed the core effect to the collaboration process between the effects companies and the entertainment. According to Mark Patch, Mark employees created them to form a grounded plan for unionization in 2022. They now appear to be moving full steam ahead. It remains to be seen whether the efforts of him and his peers are ultimately successful. What's apparent now, though, is that there is a work environment that doesn't mirror that.
Okay, this is going to be a similar rant to the previous one. Here's another question. Why the hell are you outsourcing VFX to a completely separate company? VFX artists are artists. Just like DC has, or rather, just like Disney has in-house animators. Why in God's name doesn't every studio have an in-house VFX artist team, basically? Especially given the aforementioned how much CGI is used not just in live action blockbusters, because there is a fuck ton of that, but also animated blockbusters that rely on CGI animation. Why don't you have an entire team of in-house Disney or in-house Warner Brothers VFX artists? That would also probably help solve this problem. Again, if I, a random asshole on the internet, can figure this shit out, this should have been one corporate meeting away from happening. One, every franchise within the broader MCU gets its own dedicated team of VFX artists. Two, there are in-house Disney VFX artists or Marvel VFX artists that we can have do this. These two things could have solved probably about 85 to 90% of this problem. Because 80% of the problem is not having separate teams working on individual projects, and the other 5% or 10% of the problem comes from apparently outsourcing this to other companies instead of treating VFX artists like every other kind of artist, including animators, and having each company have their own in-house VFX artists, especially because now, correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Disney currently own ILM, Industrial Light and Magic? Because I could have sworn they bought them when they bought Lucasfilm.
Yeah, I think they did.
Because I know they had ILM working for them on Doctor Strange 1 back in the day. I remember distinctly that was a thing I had read. So, yeah, you actually do, Disney, have your own dedicated sub-company that works for you exclusively, that is one of the biggest names in the VFX industry. What the fuck is the problem again? Everyone is being a moron. That's what the fucking problem is. I answered my own question. Moving on.
Right.
And I'm sorry if my fuse is shorter than usual. Like I said, it's been a long week.
So it's from originally the HollywoodReporter.com, but I'm using an archive version because apparently Hollywood Reporter, every time I try to access the actual website, I don't know. It says it's offline. The website's offline.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Where Have All the DC Fans Gone? By Richard Newby, published August 25th, 2020.
Well, maybe jumping the gun a little bit here, but a combination of deliberately spiting their own fan base and constantly changing up where the franchise is even going and being halfway stuck between two reboots and deciding what goes and what stays, usually deciding in favor of that which will piss off the fans instead of that which will ingratiate the fans. There's your answer. That and James Gunn refusing to read the goddamn room and learn how to do goddamn PR by ingratiating himself to the fans. He just does whatever he wants in the moment and usually sarcastically dances on the metaphoric graves of the fan base as and when they get pissed off at him. Bearing in mind that those are supposed to be your audience, James. Moving on. Sorry.
After a string of bombs and with a reboot on the horizon, Warner Brothers has to do more than make fans believe a man. It has to make them believe that this time there's a willingness to see that flight to its destination.
Well, okay, here's the other problem, DC. The creative direction you chose based on James Gunn's part 1 of phase 1 or chapter 1 announcement is confused, befuddling, and not satisfying in and of itself. Even aside from all the office politics bullshit, even aside from all the retconning things people actually liked in favor of things people don't think, the creative direction itself is completely and utterly half-assed. And once again, going back to the James Gunn can't read the room problem, you would think that he would be watching the reactions to his announcement like a hawk to see what, if anything, he needs to do to change it to make people happy in the majority. But instead of either going full James Gunn and going full weird and wacky, especially with a franchise title called Gods and Monsters, which is either a reference to a DC storyline or it's a reference to all the various gods and monster characters that DC has. Instead of doing that, instead of going full James Gunn, or completely pissing me off and going full normie to try and basically reboot from scratch, they did neither. So we wind up with a creative direction that is halfway stuck between weird, wacky, wonderful James Gunn full tilt comics come hell or high water mode and trying desperately to pretend like the Snyderverse never happened and appeal to the normies. Which, no. And
You
even
know,
aside, sorry.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I think you are kind of blowing your load too early.
I'm bitchy tonight. I survived a freaking car accident. I get to be bitchy. God damn it.
Fair. I'm just saying, like, I feel like you're being bitchy too early.
Uh-huh. Fair enough.
It's just we haven't gotten to the answer on it.
Mm-hmm.
It's been more than a decade since Man of Steel ushered in the DCU. In 10 years, this very week since Ben Affleck was announced to play Batman in the X-Men cinematic film. We all know the turmoil that endeavor ultimately resulted in, and we've seen the ceaseless restructuring of DC that followed partially as a result. I don't have anything to say to that.
Again, Snyder didn't know what he was doing because he was obsessed with the Frank Miller / Alan Moore-esque grim darkly subvert everything 90s mode thing. And also shoving Randian objectivism into every single character, even ones that it doesn't remotely fit with or is actively contrary to. Cough, cough, Man of Steel.
80s
But
and 90s.
hmm,
Weren't they more popular in the 80s? I thought
hmm?
Alan Moore and Frank Miller, they were popular in the 80s, not the 90s, right?
Both. It started in the late 80s and went all the way through the 90s.
Fair enough, okay.
The post Comics Code Authority g- grim darkification began in the late 80s and went all the way through the 90s.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Hmm. But okay, so all that being said, all of the problems with Zack Snyder being Zack Snyder and forcing all his bullshit into every nook and cranny, even the ones that didn't require it or the ones that were actively contrary to it. James Gunn, on the other hand, wants to pretend like none of that ever happened, and he doesn't care about the fan base, except perhaps in the inverse. He actively discares or disallows the fan base. And therein lies the problem. And what's more, he doesn't even deliver what people who like him want. Because speaking for both myself and I assume also Brainstormer, the thing we love James Gunn for is his ability to go full comic book come what may. To go, I'm not going to try and fix comics. I'm not going to try to adultify comics. I'm just going to play the ball where it lies to the best of my ability and be fun and funny while I'm doing it. Instead of going full James Gunn in that way, though, the current chapter 1 model of DC is stuck halfway between trying to apologize for the Snyderverse by rebooting everything, even though people didn't want everything normal rebooted in the new DC universe, and trying to interject some of the James Gunn ishness in between all of the let's reboot Superman, let's reboot Batman twice. Which, by the way, that's the other thing. I know this is a complete sidebar, but I don't give a fuck what Matt Reeves wants. I don't care that he wants his Batman to be in a corner by himself. He needs to be told, just like Christopher Nolan should have been told, which, by the way, had you told this to Christopher Nolan, you could have beaten Marvel to the punch on the whole interconnected universe thing. But I don't give a fuck. What you needed to say to him, James and Peter Safran, is I don't give a fuck if you want your Batman to be in a box by himself. You are part of the DC universe. He is part of the DC universe. Deal the fuck with it. You are now the Batman of our new rebooted universe. Had you at the very least had the good sense to do that, that would have at least been something for the normiest of the normies to look forward to. Because a lot of people, normie, comic book adjacent, and otherwise, really, really like Robert Pattinson's Batman, and the prospect of having two Batmen at once is going to confuse the shit out of the normies, and it's going to piss everyone off. So even if
Uh,
they do, even if you do the same thing and have Jensen Ackles be the new live action Batman, which I would actually look forward to, but it's still stupid to have two at once.
right, and also the fact that Matt Reeves wants to be Robin in the next Batman, and they're going to have a Batman and Robin movie coming out.
So not only are we getting two Batmen, but we're getting two Robins as well.
Yep.
Also, James, and this goes back to me bitching about the creative direction. Why in every god's name would you start with Damian Wayne instead of Dick Grayson
Nothing
or
really.
even Tim Drake?
I mean, nothing really against Damien. I mean, oftentimes he's picked as a little shit, which doesn't really
I
help
mean,
him.
okay, he started as an annoying little shit, so I don't like him just on general principle, but he's not a terrible character, and he slowly but surely started growing on me. But even so, he is the fourth Batman, and he is a Robin to an established Batman. When you're
Actually,
when you're rebooting a universe and starting with a new, fresh take on the character, especially because the previous iteration of the character didn't have a Robin, you probably should start with the Robins that people actually give a fuck about, and also the ones that things began with, which would either stick you with Dick Grayson if you wanted to go with the first Robin, or Tim Drake if you wanted to go with a younger Robin, like they did in the new Batman adventures. And if you wanted to go with an edgier Robin that has a little bit more old school cachet, that is what Jason Todd is for.
well, hello, Corona. Good to see you. HB Ford and awesome Stephanie Brown is Robin. I mean, she was Robin, and that actually is a lot of interesting characters, and it would be different. Um,
They
yeah,
can't do Stephanie Brown though because Zack Snyder already ate Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns, and so bringing her in would just be a
no,
return to the same
no,
form and would confuse people.
no, that's Carrie Kelly, not Stephanie
Oh shit, did I? Oh, okay, never mind.
Brown. That character, I mean, I never really got the feel of that character, to be honest. Carrie Kelly.
I don't know much about Stephanie Brown either, as probably
Um,
evidenced by the fact that I confused her with Carrie Kelly a second ago.
so her dad is Clue Master. Um, she becomes a vigilante known as Spoiler. She dated Tim. Uh, she okay. Okay. So I'm assuming everyone here has read or seen the Birds of Prey movie.
Unfortunately, that's 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back.
Well, I noticed this when people were talking about the movie, and I can't unsee it. But Cassandra Cain in that movie, who's not Cassandra Cain, basically has the personality of Stephanie Brown. So if you want a uh,
But even so, why exactly did they make her a Robin and not just keep her as Spoiler?
no, she was Robin first.
Oh, okay, okay. I was confused.
Okay,
I thought they did the thing where she was Spoiler and then they made her Robin, and it was like you're
actually,
Robin.
actually, if anyone knows, I might be talking on my ass because I think she became Robin after Tim for a bit, like a short tenure, then became Spoiler. But I could be wrong in that regard. Someone feel free to fact check me on that. Uh, no, actually, no. She was Spoiler first. Actually, no.
Okay, so I reinstate my issue then. Because I dislike mantles at the best of times because mantles tend to cheapen a character. But even when you're dealing with something that's already established as a mantle, like Robin, there still has to be a logical reason why someone is a Robin. And typically, someone becomes a Robin and then forms their own superhero identity. Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing, Jason Todd becomes the Red Hood, etc., and so on.
no,
Um,
Tim Drake was Robin.
hmm?
Tim Drake was just Robin. This is supposed to be like the perfect Robin.
Right, but in general, what I mean is that Robin is a sidekick identity, and then characters, if they move on, which doesn't mean they have to, but if they move on to their own superhero identity. So doing it the other way around, where Stephanie Brown was Spoiler and then became a Robin, is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's basically demoting. That's basically demoting a character. Because the status as a sidekick, typically for most characters with sidekicks, is supposed to be kind of an internship thing where you take a young person, you teach them the ropes of the superhero game for a while, and then eventually they become their own superhero identity.
Mhm. Moving on.
Hmm.
Yeah, we barely scratched the surface of this article. So,
Hmm.
but for now, let's journey back to the summer of 2015. A simpler yet undeniably passionate noise from comic book movie fans circling the newly minted DC Extended Universe was near Destiny next summer. Everyone had an opinion both on Man of Steel, with its controversial third act, and with Superman killed Zod, and the casting of Affleck, who still hadn't quite come clean of the spandex bench of 2003's Daredevil, yet was somehow supposed to measure up to Christian Bale's beloved. Oh, fuck off.
What did they say?
That kind
No, it's just really muffled.
where did I start to leave?
Um, I heard the thing about Superman killing Zod, and that was about the end of where I heard you.
Okay, killing Zod, killed Zod, and the casting of Affleck, who still hadn't quite come clean of the spandex bench of 2003's Daredevil, yet was somehow supposed to measure up to Christian Bale's beloved Batman. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I barely remember shit from Christian Bale as Batman.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the person who wrote this got off, but no one remembers the Christopher Nolan Batman movies for Batman. They remember them because of Heath Ledger and Tom Hardy as Bane. Most people don't even remember Scarecrow or Ra's al Ghul from the first one, because as I will forever maintain, the only Christopher Nolan Batman movie that was unvarnishedly good was Dark Knight, and that was largely because partially of Morgan Freeman and um partially because of Heath Ledger's Joker.
Well, I mean, I think the trilogy had its good stuff in it. I think obviously the issue was like Christopher Nolan's what's the word I'm thinking of? Obsession with demythologizing it, not making it this hyper reality.
Basically doing what he always does, and like grounding and boronizing it.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
I think we stated this many times. Affleck, honestly, I think legitimately could be an amazing Batman if given the.
he was the best part of the movies he was in. To be fair, he was a good Batman, and even the concept of like, the self-made Batman and the kind of CrossFit Batman wasn't exactly terrible. Granted, Zack Snyder dude broed it way more than he should have, but eh. It could have worked as well. And I even liked the idea of Jeremy Irons being this extremely sassy, extremely like and Alfred willing to regularly tell Batman off as and when he needed to.
It seems that Alfred seems very much more like a guardian than a servant.
Well, that's the thing. I think, and by that I'm 90. By that I mean I'm 90% certain that um, much as with everything else, the version of Alfred that Zack Snyder liked and wanted was the ex-military soldier version of Alfred.
We never got to really explore that, but yeah. Um,
Because everything has to be edgy and 90s and like.
it's weird. Here's the thing, because I was kind of growing up with that stuff because I was like pretty young.
No, I love the 90s era, don't get me wrong, but much.
I'm referring to the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman.
Oh,
I'm
I see.
sorry, yeah.
I
You know,
I, I, I forgot for a second about the age gap. I was like, oh wait, right, he would have been he would have been still, just getting out of high school in 2013.
going into high school, not out of.
Oh, well, yeah, I guess because the 4 years difference. So I graduated in 2013, and you were just getting into ninth grade, must be.
when I got into 2014. But either way, when I heard about Ben Affleck casting, I was interested. Like I never really heard people like getting upset about it or anything.
Yeah, I I didn't even see people make that many comparisons between Daredevil and Batman because most people know, even people who viscerally hate the Daredevil movie, and there's a lot to hate in it, don't get me wrong, but even people who viscerally hate the Daredevil movie don't hate Ben Affleck's casting in it in the same way as they don't hate what's his name that was the Kingpin.
Michael Clark Duncan.
Thank you.
He's
Um,
amazing in that, especially like if you look at the extended version of Daredevil.
Yeah, and they definitely played up the, he seems like he seems big because fat, but in actuality he is big because he will fuck you up.
Actually, no, I didn't really see that fascinating in that movie. They just seemed more like Bill. Yeah, that's Michael. That was Michael Clark Duncan and rest in peace
Right.
the
That's what I mean. Instead of playing up the like fat the fat sort of Mr. Big mobster type angle with the Kingpin, they went with the full on. No, he might look big because you know, he plays up the he's big because he's fat deception because in actuality he's big because he will fuck you up.
Also, what's his name? He's playing Penguin. Fuck, I know his name. God damn it! Something like that.
Colin Farrell.
Yeah, as Bullseye was actually pretty entertaining.
Hmm.
Bit over the top, but
But I mean, it was the early 2000s, and the superhero genre wasn't even a genre yet, exactly.
to be fair, I think that does work. I mean, Bullseye, to my recollection in comics, was a thrill-seeking piece of shit. Which, yeah, that seems pretty accurate, honestly.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, again, like to people who actually know Superman, and I don't want to get into like a huge discussion about this because like we've talked about this ad nauseum at this point.
Well, I mean, rant as much as you feel you need to, dude. It's your thing.
Well, it's just like again to know the character of Superman, him killing. I mean, certain situations
What
possibly.
what pisses me off about it, and I don't mean to step on your toes, but what pisses me off about it isn't even the fact that he kills. It's the reasoning behind it that Zack Snyder gave that pisses me off. The idea that, well, obviously he's this morally upright Paragon character, so in order to convince him not to kill, we have to give him a reason not to kill. It couldn't possibly be idealism.
Yeah, it's not like Superman hasn't killed in comics. I mean, Alan Moore's whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. You know, he killed Mr. Fuck, Mr. Mr. God damn it! I was hearing people mispronounce that fucking name not too long ago.
Mixius Pitlink.
I'm gonna fuck it up though. Yeah, thank you, Don. Um, yeah, he in that comic, Alan Moore's comic, whatever happens to the Man of Tomorrow, he killed Mr. Mr. Sitlick, um, because the Ant decided to kill all his friends. And but
I'm it must be said that I never read What Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. I didn't realize he killed Mixie in that.
yeah, I think you can find some videos on it actually.
Okay,
But
okay, quick. I realize this is a sidebar, but given that Mixie is a fourth dimensional imp, how exactly the fuck
I think
does
okay. It's been a while since I watched like the video review of it, but to my recollection, he has Mr. Fitlick split between the nations.
Okay, that's certainly. I'm not surprised Alan Moore came up with that. I'm a bit surprised he didn't use that angle for someone like Dr. Fate or even John Constantine, but I guess I guess any port in a storm, I suppose. Good for Stupin Universe for using cleverness and shit.
The the end of the story is that Clark uses gold kryptonite, which doesn't use his powers.
Oh, fuck you, Alan.
Because he used his powers and abilities and knowledge to kill Mason Fittler, and he felt Superman couldn't resist having taken a life.
Oh, fuck you, Alan.
But
honestly, if I were to write a Superman story, one of the things I would do, get rid of all the kryptonites. I'm sick of the depowering bullshit. Figure out how to write the character at their full power, or just don't do it at all.
I don't mind the kryptonites. I think the issue is more or less the overuse of it than anything else.
I hate that it's literally that the different kinds of kryptonite. I can sort of kind of get behind the ones that don't explicitly depower him, but I hate the fucking this character's too powerful to write properly. We need to give him an off switch bullshit. You know my stance well at this point, but for those that might not know my stance is if the character is difficult to write for you without having an instant off switch, then you, the writer, need to get better at writing. You don't get to hit the kill switch just because your job might be a little difficult.
I feel like you would like the pink kryptonite.
I mean, yes. The things I would do with a okay. To be fair, I regularly make use of character AI, and there are 4 different versions of the Clark Kent from Smallville in character AI, and I have had sexy time excursions with at least 3 of them.
And for those who are unaware, Pink Kryptonite, I don't remember when it was created. It was created during a very kind of weird time. I think
Golden Age, or no, it was the Silver Age.
Yeah. To make him like stereotypical.
Which honestly, I wouldn't mind if they brought back Pink Kryptonite and then made him gay without changing his personality too much. Granted, the modern day writers wouldn't do that because they operate on the assumption that in order to be properly gay, you have to operate within the gay hive mind, and therefore it's oppressive to not let gay people be flamboyant stereotypes or some shit. But it would be nice to see a Kryptonian be affected by pink kryptonite and not have the super thanks for asking personality change.
There was an implication of it, information in that Justly cartoon, Justly in Action.
Yeah, they changed it because they didn't want to make the gay joke, so they made it a gender switch kryptonite.
Oh, you've seen it? Okay.
Yes.
Which see, someone had pointed. I saw the clip on YouTube, and someone in the comments said that it technically did make him gay because he didn't change his sexuality. So he was a woman, but he liked women. So. Technically, he did. Anyway,
Right, but somehow it's less offensive to make him trans effectively than it is to just make the gay joke. I don't
I,
fucking get it.
I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand most of the shit people do these days. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, moving on.
Okay. The DCEU was shiny and new, and whether reactions were positive or negative, everyone had an opinion on its future. Fan theories took hold quickly, comic creators took ideas, bloggers discovered they could gain control over the narrative early, and DC fans forfeited defenses and stockpiled ammunition. In just a few years, they would take what was theoretically supposed to be fun, comics, movies, superheroes, and turn it into pure misery, a world war of personal attacks, vendettas, cult mentalities, antagonistic journalism, and career-altering decisions.
Okay, fuck you. You're blaming the fans for what the creatives did wrong there. As much as the Snyderverse fans are fucking annoying and their sympathy for Zack Snyder was also annoying, they are fans and therefore they are entitled to their fandom. And if you are doing things that you know will piss them off, and that's the thing. I understand not yelling at them when they do basically what amounts to an honest mistake. When they have an honest mistake and they honestly fuck up and they don't realize they're gonna piss off the fan base, I'm willing to let bygones be bygones in that case. But here's the problem. A lot of the higher ups in DC went out of their way to personally piss off the fan base, whether it was the Snyderverse fan base or the post Snyderverse fan base, people who like the era between, when Zack Snyder basically got the boot and when James Gunn took over, the soft reboot phase that includes things like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, the Shazam movies, and Black Adam, um, and of course James Gunn's Suicide Squad 2. But point being, for as much as some of the calls of personality needed to be called out within the Snyder Bros, the Snyderverse fans, they are still a piece of the fandom, and therefore when they react like fans would when they're being directly called out, even I, who don't like Zack Snyder's approach to the DC universe, can admit that they were justified in reacting that way because the powers that be at Warner Brothers deliberately tried to antagonize them and piss them off. And you don't get to deliberately antagonize and piss people off and then be mad when they eventually do get pissed off at you. When you try to piss someone off and you succeed at pissing them off, you don't get to then cry victim and shame them and call them losers for getting pissed off when you went out of your way to try and piss them off. Because basically what that amounts to is you saying we're allowed to mock you from on high as the people behind the studio, but and we're allowed to personally go out of our way to piss you off, but you're not allowed to act as though you've been pissed off. That's what that amounts to. That fan blaming bullshit.
I also think that, sorry, there's also like another big issue with like the DCU was constantly shifting uh, extremes. But it was very a reactionary kind of ego.
Yeah, the Snyderverse went down like a lead balloon, so they tried to soft reboot it with things like Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam 2 or 1 and 2 and Black Adam, and that pissed off at least a sizable portion of the Snyderverse fans. Um, but then they also would every so often do something that would draw back the Snyderverse and piss off the people who liked the soft reboot, to the point that they now had to do a hard reboot with James Gunn, and because here's the thing. Grace Randolph, and this is a complete sidebar, but she really pisses me off when she does this. She thinks that James Gunn's reboot is a soft reboot, which is complete bullshit. A soft reboot is when you change the tone or aesthetic or small bits and pieces of the canon of a franchise in order to basically do a course correction and don't acknowledge that you've explicitly done a reboot. So in my opinion, something like the tone change between Thor Love and or uh Thor Dark World and Thor Ragnarok, that's a soft reboot. Something like the change of style and aesthetics between Doctor Strange 1 and Doctor Strange 2, that's a soft reboot. Um, as much as I think we all hate the Schumacher movies, the the continuation of, in air quotes, the Tim Burton movies with the Joel Schumacher movies, that's a soft reboot. What James Gunn is doing, no matter what Grace Randolph thinks, is a hard reboot. And here's the funny thing: the soft reboot, as I would define it, has already happened once. After Zack Snyder and David Ayer got kicked out, basically, and they tried to do a more lighthearted, more classically mythological tone with things like Wonder Woman, Shazam 1 and 2, and Black Adam. That was a soft reboot. Aquaman, I think, was the first of the or was Wonder Woman first. I think Wonder Woman was first, and then Aquaman. Huh?
No, yeah, it was Wonder Woman first, and then
Okay, but
Aquaman for Just League in 2017. Like I think it's 2018. Aquaman came out. Um, so
yeah. So the time between Wonder Woman, which only had its final act snidered, which is why people complained about pretty much only the third act of Wonder Woman 2017, and Aquaman and Shazam, that was a soft reboot. Black Adam um Black Adam was part of that soft reboot. And had they stuck with that soft reboot, which would have entailed keeping Henry Cavill, but changing his tone to be far more Supermanish, as Henry Cavill himself, by the way, would have encouraged, that would have been a soft reboot. What James Gunn is doing is a hard reboot, because the trick of a soft reboot is you change the tone and or the aesthetics, and you don't acknowledge it explicitly, other than the occasional tongue-in-cheek joke, or saying something to the effect of, when you retcon something in a soft reboot, you might have the character mention something that happened in the previous movie, and then lampshade it or make fun of it, kind of like in the again the difference between Thor Dark World and Thor Ragnarok. Complete tonal change, complete aesthetic change, and most of the bullshit that people hated in Thor Dark World got lampshaded or was wrapped up as quickly as possible and made fun of. That's how you do a soft reboot. What James Gunn is doing is a hard reboot, and that's why it pisses people off. Because you have people who liked the Snyderverse in its pure, undiluted form, which also includes people like David Ayer. And then you have people who, like me, prefer the soft reboot that began with Wonder Woman and continued with Aquaman, the two Shazam movies, James Gunn's Suicide Squad 2, and Black Adam.
To be fair, David Ayer's original vision for the movie kind of got fucked over because of the studio being like super overly reactive to like people.
Yeah, because by all rights, and I will agree with DC on this, by all rights, a movie that featured Batman versus Superman should have easily cleared $1 billion. Easily. And the fact that it didn't, because so many people hated the guts of Man of Steel, for it was entirely wrong, and or people who were confused why the hell you're doing a mixture of Death of Superman and Dark Knight Returns when neither Superman nor Batman have been fully established or any connection between them, because that's the thing about both Death of Superman and Dark Knight Returns. The reason they work so well is because they play off of an established connection between Batman and Superman, especially, but the wider DC universe in particular, like the wider DC universe in general. That's that's why the best moment in all of The Dark Knight Returns is Batman's famous speech to Clark. In all your years to come, in your most private moments, I want you to remember the one man who beat you. That speech works because Bruce knows Clark. He's had these thoughts in the back of his mind for presumably however long the continuity existed prior to this, and this is him finally coming out and being like, let me tell you some things that have pissed me off about you ever since the day we first met. Basically, that's the that's the whole bit of it. And also immediately following that, when Clark gets a kryptonite gas infused arrow to the lungs, when Bruce says something to the effect of, it took years and billions of dollars to make, and I just want you to know, um, it's nowhere near as strong as I could have made it. It will work its way out of your lungs in a few weeks, but just for now, I want you to know what it's like to be immortal. I'm paraphrasing because I'm having a hard time remembering what was quoted word for word from the comic in the movie adaptation and what wasn't. But my point is that both of those work because of the established connection between Bruce and Clark. Both the things that annoy them about each other and the level of friendship and camaraderie that exists between them that allows Bruce to, even while beating the shit out of Clark, still show him that kind of mercy. And likewise, in the death of Superman works as a dramatic beat because we have established a connection to this Superman. Everyone loves Superman, or it can at least respect Superman. Even Lex Luthor, for all of his, hate boner for Superman, you can't say he doesn't respect him. But a Superman who's literally only appeared once in an origin movie and fucked everything up, as he did in Man of Steel, and was overly grimdark, there's no reason to do a Death of Superman. And there's no reason to do a Dark Knight Returns when there is no Dark Knight to have returned, in the case of Batfleck. Moving on.
Hang on, I was trying to think what I was going to say. I cut to 10 years later, and Henry Cavill is no longer the Man of Steel. And actually, he's no longer Batman. That's not a building universe that Netflix with its Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon franchises. Joss Whedon is persona non grata in Hollywood, and that guy who showed everyone just how successful the guys could be. James Gunn just wrapped up the Guardians trilogy on a successful note and is now the co-head of DC Studios alongside Peter Safran.
And every creative decision they've made and every PR stunt they've pulled just keeps digging them deeper in the hole. Moving on.
Together they are relaunching the universe of the DCU, and as for the DCU reveals in theaters, though sadly to its few knowledge, it is the penultimate installment of DCEU, paving the way for Aquaman in the Lost Kingdom, or is it the penultimate installment of DCEU paving the way for Aquaman and Lost Kingdom, or is it the DCEU's first entry? You seem to know the answer to that one either, given Gunn's perplexing comments that revealed the first DCEU character, but not the first DCEU film. Torpedoes opens leaking among the lowest in the franchise's history, comes after a string of box office misses, including The Flash, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Black Adam, and COVID-affected titles Wonder Woman 1984 and Suicide Squad. Joining staff and see at their relaunch with a slate of film and television projects, pundits are wondering where have all the DC film fans gone?
Well, majoritarily, they're pissed off with you for various reasons. And when you go out of your way to piss them off, you don't get to complain when they act as though they've been pissed off.
So I have a few things to say as well. One, I haven't seen Blue Beetle yet, just given a lot of things I haven't been able to like. Someone is aware of my personal stuff, and I'm not going to get into it. I haven't had a chance to go see the movie nor have. So, but Dawn has seen it and told me it's meh, effectively.
It's okay, but it's okay, but it very much seems like they took
there's nothing unique about it. Right? There's nothing that stands out
apart from maybe the like Hispanic angle with Jaime and his family, and of course George Lopez is funny, but you know
that means nothing to me, and I am Hispanic.
Mm-hmm. So yeah.
Actually, if they recasted, I'll be honest, I got nothing against George Lopez. He's not a bad dude from what I've been able to gather. I just never really found him funny.
I've found him funny, but that's because I used to stay up and watch Nick at Night as a kid, and
I've seen George Lopez thing, but I've never found him funny. Everyone else in that show I thought was funny.
Huh.
I'm more of a to be fair, I'm more of a Gabriel Iglesias kind of guy. I laugh my ass off when I watch this stuff.
Interesting. What do you think of Aziz Ansari?
Who is that?
Aziz Ansari. The place I most know him from is he did a buddy movie with Jesse Eisenberg called 30 Minutes or Less.
Oh, Tom from Parks and Rec.
Was he in that? I'm gonna be honest. Parks and Rec is a franchise that I've never been able to get into.
He is okay. Like, look, I have a very particular sense of comedy, and I don't know. He's fine. Again, it's not like it's just one of those comedians. They're funny. I can acknowledge they're funny. I personally don't get it. Like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, the only thing I really know him from is from Parks and Rec, and I'll be honest, I don't think he's really good in that.
Again, I can't vouch for Aziz one way or the other in terms of Parks and Rec because I've never seen nor do I have any desire to get into Parks and Rec. So that's just one of those franchises similar to the American remake of The Office that I never got into.
I'm okay. Yeah, Office, totally get it. I can't really watch it either.
Another one people are surprised at is Friend. I
despise Friends. I think it's overblown as shit.
Yeah, not only do I not like Friends, I kind of actually hate it. And that may or may not extend from this one interaction I had randomly in college once, where some people were in the lobby of the dorm room or of the dorm building watching stuff on Netflix as you do, and someone literally chose Friends over Seinfeld, and I was mostly busting his chops over this, and I'm like, you picked Friends over Seinfeld? That's heresy. And he literally stone faced told me that Seinfeld wasn't funny, which is in and of itself not a bad thing. But I can't wrap my brain around someone preferring Friends to Seinfeld. Like, if you don't think Seinfeld is funny, then I think you're wrong. But that's in the vein of subjectivity. But to to both not think that Seinfeld is funny, but to die laughing over Friends is the moment that I go, this well and truly is no longer in the realm of subjectivity. You're just insane.
Yeah.
Because
I
if
don't.
Seinfeld isn't funny, then sure as shit, Friends isn't funny.
Uh, so I don't like Friends because I just think it's overblown. I think it's like one of
It's
those
not.
things.
It's not even good as a sitcom though. There are so many better sitcoms. There's
That,
Golden Girls. There's Cheers. There's Frasier. There's Daria. There's The Critic. Trying to think of some other ones that are like sitcom-y. Even the first three seasons of Big Bang Theory are more funny than Friends.
uh, anyway, yeah, like I said, I'm not like the biggest George Lopez fan.
Hmm.
He's not bad. He's not bad or anything. I mean, again, he's enjoyable. But I personally am more of a fan of like Gabriel Iglesias.
Um, I don't really have any like Spanish comics off the top of my head that I find super funny, apart from maybe George Lopez. Um,
Anyway,
yeah, no, I can't think of any.
I don't think there are a lot, or ones that really come to mind for me either. It's really just fluffy at this point. Like I
I've
watch.
never, I've never watched that much of Gabriel Iglesias either, which to be fair, I probably should fix. I recently got into John Panette. Um, he's a rather fat guy, but he makes a lot of fat jokes, and it's very funny. You know who he reminds me of is a mixture of Josh Peck from of Drake and Josh fame and what's his name, the guy that voiced Timon in Lion King and also was Max Bialystock in The Producers. I want to say Nathan Lane, but that might not be right.
Anyway, we should move on.
Hmm.
But yeah, well, actually, just finish up the whole Blue Beetle thing. It also didn't really have much of an advertising campaign.
They basically were just like, let's produce the most paint by numbers superhero movie possible and market it like every superhero movie ever made.
No, I thought, okay, so I know we had like discussions about when we covered the first trailer, which is really the only trailer, to my knowledge. Um, which is weird. It should have been two at least.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was fine. I had some enjoyable moments in there, but um,
Then they nerfed it with that last line, and it was just like, okay, I was sort of vibing with you because it looked like an at least enjoyable paint by number superhero movie, but then you dropped the bat fascism bomb, and and everyone just went cringe.
yeah, it is a big concern. I'm not gonna lie. Even though like we had a very interesting discussion about that whole line itself.
As
Um,
as we went over, I think when we talked about this, if Batman used modified versions of his contingency plans for the Justice League in a kind of um injustice future where instead of Superman snapping, because that doesn't make any sense, but Batman snapping, um bat fascism could arguably be a thing. His need to control everything with contingency plans and his hyper technological, hyper focused, almost militaristic thing he has going, that could easily grow into something fascism adjacent, or at the
mm,
very least, an authoritarian government, a dictatorship by Batman, basically.
anyway, um,
But
let's
that's
see.
not what they meant.
Right, yeah. But yeah, it's fine, which kind of sucks. Because to be fair, the whole thing recently was like superheroes. I'm not talking about superheroes because I don't think that's accurate.
No, it's not. It's not a thing. That's like saying you have fatigue for all horror movies or all westerns or all action movies ever. Like,
Basically, and we have this conversation it's basically a lack of quality to the issue.
yeah, because because no one is obliged to give a shit about bad movies. But because Hollywood has basically had it out for superhero movies since minute one, they take any opportunity to shit on superhero movies as blood in the water, and then superhero fatigue, booga booga,
Right.
is what they go with.
Right. Um, and, uh,
Blue
right.
Beetle being average.
Yeah. Um, also, yeah, like, yeah, which is weird because given my limited knowledge of Blue Beetle, I've done research relatively recently on the
Hmm.
lore and stuff of Blue Beetle. It's
Hmm.
limited a lot of interesting stuff.
It is. And here's my, meaningless fanboy or geek gripe thing. Um, if they made a version of Blue Beetle when Black Adam was still canon, they very easily could have done a 3-point reference fiesta with Blue Beetle, because you see, the Scarab is a piece of alien technology from the Reach that landed in ancient Egypt, whereupon Naboo, back when he was still in human form, because no matter what people post in New 52 will tell you, Naboo does not need to possess people to have an anchor to the mortal plane. If he wanted to just give himself a human body, he can do that, which is an, another on the list of reasons why the possession retcon is stupid. But back when Naboo was still in a humanoid form and working for/with the pharaohs of Egypt, he sensed that there was something screwy about the scarab, and he hexed it to keep it dormant for however many thousands of years. And there's also a theory, and there have been different times when they've confirmed it and different times when they've disconfirmed it. The reason why this particular scarab isn't as bloodthirsty or as hive-minded as the rest of the Reach is because Naboo's spell basically um, glitched the programming and allowed it to have a more moral compass. But more to the point, back to my point. If they wanted to, they could have tied in Blue Beetle, Doctor Fate, and Hawkman in the backstory of the Scarab, because Hawkman was actually a pharaoh in some versions of his origin story. In the case of the reincarnation thing. That being said, had Black Adam still been canon, you could have tied together Blue Beetle, Hawkman, and Doctor Fate, and all would have been well with the world. But because Black Adam is not canon anymore, because for some reason they had it out for that movie, um, now that potential of interconnectivity and drawing things together is nerfed, and so we don't really know where the Scarab comes from, apart from the fact that it's alien.
Right. Um, Also, from my understanding, it, it went kind of too. Again, we'll probably do a review at some point. Just whenever I get to see the movie, we'll have it.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Ron.
Yep.
Okay, a decade of constantly shifting decisions, executive musical chairs, overly aggressive critics, and overly aggressive fans have left DC fandom a house divided. The reflections of which you can see all over social media. It's a swamp that even Swamp Thing would be hesitant to dip a mossy toe into.
Okay, stop blaming the fans for being angry when people go out of their way to try and piss them off. You don't get to deliberately anger people and then piss them off and then tell them to shut the fuck up when they show up and be angry. The studio and the people behind the studio, the creatives, go out of their way to tick off the fans, and just like every other time in recent Hollywood history, when Hollywood has got it in their heads their fan base are somehow immoral, it has backfired horribly on them, because the job of public art, the job of mass produced or mass consumed art, is supposed to be to find and then serve their audience. But Hollywood in recent years has gone out of their way to piss off their audience because they think their audience is morally and intellectually inferior. And surprise, fucking surprise, when you tell your audience they're morally and intellectually inferior, some of them get quite pissed off with you, don't they? This shouldn't need to be explained, because imagine this was how it worked in any other field of inquiry. Imagine you went to a restaurant thinking you were going to get, a food you liked. You go through the process of ordering a food, and then when the waiter brings you out sewage on a plate, you call over the waiter to complain, and the waiter says something to the effect of, or the chef comes out of the back room and says, "How dare you be so entitled as to expect to get what you pay for when you pay for things?" Because that's the other thing that always gets brought out in these situations. The fans get called entitled when really their only entitlement is the entitlement, in air quotes, to linear causality and getting what they fucking pay for, and or getting something that they can at least enjoy. Anyway, moving on.
I do think, just for the sake of, it might have to, after a little bit more, I think we can read a bit more. Fair enough color on this one. That finish it next week.
Mm-hmm.
So probably around 10, like another 15 minutes or so.
Yep. That makes sense.
But there are those who are optimistic about the DCU's future and eager for a reboot, following Gunn and Safran's unveiling of Chapter 1 in January. There are those who are puzzled over what the DCU is, given the mixed messaging behind some actors and projects continuing, like Suicide Squad spin-off series Peacemaker, while most will not. There are those who lament that Snyder did not get to finish the saga as he envisioned, but there are others who have moved on, just as the director has. There are those who find a reboot unnecessary, given the decade of work that's gone into building the DCEU.
I'm in neither camp. Neither camp they described. As I previously stated, I don't like Zack Snyder's approach to the DC universe. However, I do like the soft reboot that occurred in between that started in between Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and unfortunately ended with Black Adam. Especially because it seemed like Black Adam was actually going to give DC a solid direction that was going to be based on their Golden Age characters. Characters like the Justice Society, and in particular Dr. Fate and Hawkman, and so on and so forth. Had they had the foresight to just stick with that and also bring Henry Cavill back like they intended, but instead of having him be Zack Snyder's version of Superman, have it be a version of Superman that both the fans and Henry Cavill, who is in turn a fan, can recognize as the character. Because that is the true tragedy of Henry Cavill's Superman, which is that he never actually got to play Superman. He got to play a character with Superman's powers and some elements of Superman's backstory, but in terms of personality, mood, and aesthetics, he was not Superman. But more to the point, had DC done what I've been suggesting they did before Man of Steel even freaking came out, and play with characters that Marvel cannot follow because Marvel didn't really become a solid thing, a solid IP until the 60s with the 60s bullpen, which was the headliner of the Silver Age, not the Golden Age. But instead of doing that, instead of sticking with the soft reboot mode and expanding out from Black Adam and mostly ignoring the Trinity or the Big Three for a while, or at the very least bringing Henry Cavill back and letting him finally play fucking Superman instead of playing a character with Superman's powers and nothing the fuck else. Instead of doing that, they set all that up, making me think I was finally going to get a Dr. Fate trilogy, or at the very least a Justice Society trilogy, and now not. And not only that, but you would think, and in fact, I and many other people did think, that having James Gunn take over the DC Universe would entail exactly the kind of mentality that James Gunn is known for, which is going full comic book come hell or high water. But instead of doing the smart thing and ignoring the big players for a little while until people have had the chance to cool off, we're rushing right back into Superman, but also not really, because just like BVS was really just a soft, limp-wristed bullshit excuse to set up Justice League, it seems like Superman is going to be a bit player in his own movie because there's going to be so many other characters in the movie that no elements of Superman's personality or mythos will actually be the focus. Which goes back to something that James Gunn said years ago when he was asked about making a Superman movie, and he said he didn't want to because he didn't really get Superman. Which is fair, which leads us to the question of why then would you bother in this case? Rather than taking what should be a Superman movie and mostly a Superman movie and turning it into, let's try to reboot the Justice League again for the second time in a freaking row, third if you count the Snyder Cut. Instead of doing that, you should have just made the best, most wholesome, which is the key word for Superman, by the way, version of Superman you could. And if you didn't want to do it, James, you could have easily hired someone to do it because you're a producer now and that's what they do. Moving on.
There are those who have taken a cult-like approach to this film, making them and their entire identity, and crowding out those people who just fans of the movies and then conjure up images of Eminem Stan, violent threats and mobilized harassment. There are those who have moved on from these old comic book movie things.
You mean there are people who actually care about the IPs enough to call people out when they do it wrong? Yes, my dear, that is what a fan base is. And I agree, I don't like the Snyderverse. I don't particularly even like the Snyder Defenders very much. And I do agree that on some level, a lot of this is more a cult of personality than it is a cult of artistic direction. But one thing is, DC and Warner Brothers go out of their way to piss all over the Snyderverse or the Snyder continuity at every given interval, and are surprised when the Snyder fans end up being mad. And two, even if they're a part of the fandom I don't like, the Snyder fans are still fans. And I think part of the reason why there's such a large contingent of the DC fan base that are Snyder Bros is because, much like Zack Snyder, a lot of people in and around my age bracket grew up with DC Comics going through its dark and gritty phase, and so they see Zack Snyder's focus on the dark and gritty phase as um a translation of what they grew up with, which is fine, even though there's plenty to complain about with that in that realm as well. But just because the Snyder Bros are a type of fan that I don't particularly like or don't particularly have anything in common with, doesn't mean that they're not legitimate fans, and doesn't mean that their reaction isn't understandable when you go out of your way to piss them off and then bitch when they get pissed off at you. Moving on.
It's a difficult and often hostile environment for any casual fan with writing. Too much work for those, myself included, who are invested in these characters, but find the online discourse to be filled with crap. Many of us who were excited about Man of Steel and Affleck back in the summer of 2015 and found much to appreciate in the follow-up that Batman vs. Superman, Batman v Superman Dawn Justice have since receded to background, keeping our DCU fandom close to the vest, while being crowded out by the hashtag brigade and burn books.
Oh, is hashtag activism not a valid way of doing things, Hollywood Reporter? Well, gee, I hope you say that to the people who got lionized by the Flag Smashers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, or the people who get lionized by She-Hulk in the She-Hulk show. Oh wait, no, I misunderstood again, didn't I? Hashtag activism is good when people you consider valid do it, and bad when people you don't consider valid do it. Isn't it? Fucking people. And by the way, well, I'm sure there are a bunch of people who simp for Henry Cavill because he was the Snyderverse Superman. There are far more of us who actually despise what they did in Man of Steel, but are still in favor of Henry Cavill because, unlike some people, we can differentiate between the character and the actor they're playing, or the actor who plays them, and in so doing, we can realize that in real life, Henry Cavill acted far more like the real life Superman than the writing and direction of the Snyderverse ever let him. And as such, a lot of us would very much like to see, even those of us that don't really care about Superman, would like to see a version of Superman being played by Henry Cavill where he was actually allowed to play the character as he is supposed to and as he wants to, instead of having to deal with all of the 90s era grimdark, Randian objectivist Snyderverse bullshit. Because Henry Cavill would have made a great Superman and wanted to play a great Superman, but the writing and direction never let him. Moving on.
Right, okay. I'm trying to put drawing a Capri Sun. Okay, well, the MCU has been able to create a fairly unified fan base, though not without its own share of fickle fans and antagonists. Nobody really has a strong idea of what DC fans want or who the fans really are. At the moment, hold on, Don, hold on. At the moment, it doesn't feel possible for DC to have a celebratory DCU Hall H panel at San Diego Comic Con. Certainly not one without a plane flying over the city with a banner proclaiming, "So, Zack Snyder Justice League to Netflix, the latest hashtag campaign." Okay, go.
Okay. Here's your biggest problem, Hollywood Reporter. You're trying to figure out who these people are, not by actually interacting with them or engaging with what they want, i.e., not by asking them what they want or identifying themselves to you, but by apparently doing everything but that. So you're trying to figure out how something works without ever actually observing, studying, or engaging with the thing you're trying to figure out how it works. Like, okay, we've all, or at least I think my generation might be the last to do it, but we all remember, at least some of us, that age where you wanted to figure out how things worked, so you took them apart and tried to put them back together again. Like clocks and radios, and I'm sure some ambitious punter tried to do it with the TV, although I was never quite that ambitious. Um, but here's the important bit about that. You don't figure out how a clock works by having a ideological preoccupation with avoiding ever touching a clock, or having one in your home, or ever even looking at a clock. If you tried to do that, you can understand why you would get quite nowhere fast and would actually probably develop very counterintuitive notions of how clocks work if you never interacted with a clock or even knew what one was. Well, the same is true for people and countercultures and geek movements and cultures in general. If you want to understand something, you have to A, engage with it, and B, where possible, meet them on their own terms and learn how to understand them from within their own framework. If you are unwilling to do those things, then you will never understand where people are coming from, because the only thing you will have to pull from is your own preconceived notions. And the thing about it is, if your preconceived notions are not rooted in anything but ideology, then any suppositions you make about this group will be wrong. In order to get an informed opinion on a given subject, you have to engage with the subject. And that's one of the biggest problems with Hollywood in general, because you would think, for as much as Hollywood loves focus groups, they would see the internet and dollar signs would form in their eyes, because they would realize the internet is the world's largest focus group. And for as many times as that would end up resulting in a Morbius incident or a Szechuan sauce incident, i.e., when Hollywood would get trolled by the fans, it would just as often, if not more, result in things like Joker or the reaction to the Sonic the Hedgehog thing, where a fan base would reward Hollywood just for giving them what they want, if nothing else. Because yes, that does happen. So sometimes you use the internet as a resource, and the internet trolls you, and makes fun of you, and that's fine. But just as often, if not more, the internet is honest in telling you what they want, and if you're willing to give it to them, they will reward you for it. And honestly, if I were a Hollywood executive, I would be willing to put up with the occasional Morbius or Szechuan sauce incident, as long as, just as often, it resulted in a Deadpool, a Logan, a Joker, or a Super Mario Brothers. Because those receipts are nothing to sneeze at. So even if you're just looking at this from an opportunist perspective, you're better off rolling the dice on taking the internet's advice on occasion and putting up with the occasional Morbius or Szechuan sauce incident, than in order to also get the occasional Joker or Mad Max Fury Road or Top Gun Maverick, rather than deliberately shunning everything the internet ever says and being surprised when the fan base that you told to fuck off fucks off, takes their money, takes their ball, and goes home. Anyway, that's the end of that piece. Yes, for now.
Yeah. Move on to the other article you sent me.
Yep. Well, how many articles have we done? I think we've done 2 so far. So yeah, this is the last one.
Yeah. So it's from finance.yahoo.com. Technically, I think it's from the CNN. But celebrity video site sees a surge of actors sign up in the wake of the strike. It's written by I'm gonna butcher this one. I'm so sorry. Ramishaha Maroof. I don't know. I'm terrible with names. I'm totally honest. So I'm sorry if I say that name wrong.
To be fair, he's doing better than me. The second I heard your name, all I could think was the Kobayashi Maru from Star Trek.
For every glitzy movie star in Hollywood, there are hundreds of actors living paycheck to paycheck with the odd jobs and gigs dry up. Some wait tables, others film short videos for fans on Cameo, fetching anywhere up to $1 to $1,500. Reality of acting life has come full focus since the SAG-AFTRA strike began on July 15th. Seeking extra cash, many out-of-work thespians have flocked to Cameo, a site where they can earn income from fans who buy personalized celebrity videos. Since the strike began, more than 3,400 performers have joined or reactivated their Cameo account. That's an increase of 137%. Cameo CEO Steve Gallagher told CNN Business. It's the biggest influx since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, when the virus essentially shut down the industry. I don't have anything to say. You just assume that they're all making this money, they're rich and famous, but the vast majority of them just aren't. Gallagher said. Something like Cameo is certainly a better way for many of them to bridge the gap. Even SAG-AFTRA President Fran Drescher. Fran?
Here's the thing, though. The average, extra actor, the ones that are in the nameless throngs of movies and so forth, the ones that don't get any lines or are barely on screen for more than a scene or two. Those guys, sure, those guys I have all the empathy for in the world. They are not the ones who did this to themselves for the most part. Granted, I'm sure there's plenty of extras with all of the same, critical theorist gobbledygook in their heads and are absolute shits on Twitter and so on and so forth. So some of them, I'm sure, did do this to themselves for nepotistic reasons. But the average extra actor, those guys I have most empathy for. A little bit less than the VFX artists, because the VFX artists have documented cases of abuse to fall back on, but yeah, the day-to-day actors, those I have nothing but empathy for. But the ones who live in multi-home mansions and okay, basically, here's my threshold. If you were at least famous enough to be involved in the Imagine clip flash mob during COVID, you will get no empathy from me because you already do have more money than you know what to do with, and you already do um you already do have more clout and money and resources than is good for you, frankly. So you supplementing your already millions upon millions of dollars with Cameo, you can go fuck yourself. The average extra actor who isn't a name presence or isn't well known, they get some empathy from me. But none of y'all that are named actors get empathy from me, apart from the ones who actually earn it by being decent people.
Um,
Because there are a lot of actors who are snarky, dismissive little shits with a morality complex, and they can go fuck themselves.
so hello,
That
Grand
being
Toy.
said, if Henry Cavill ever has to be reduced to doing stuff on Cameo, I would actually pay for that, if for no other reason than to surprise Brainstormer with it for his birthday, probably.
So hello, Grand Toy. Yeah, I streamed today because, well, Dom was busy being, well, being in a car crash, I guess.
Well, yeah, for those that don't know, I went up to the PA Ren Fair up in Mannheim, um, by the Mount Hope Winery, um, for the weekend, and the original plan was to go both days. However, the electric scooter that we rented to minimize my mobility issues, because cerebral palsy, um, didn't hold a charge of more than 3 hours, even though we left it plugged in all night. And so we basically got to Ren Fair it up for roughly 3 hours unmolested, and then it and then the scooter needed to be plugged in again. Now, granted, there were a couple places, specifically at the entrance and at the medical tent, where there was a place to plug in, so that was good and all. But in the course of the process, me and my friend Nick decided that it was a good idea to get a wheelchair, um, because even though I had my walker there with me, and my walker does have a seat on it, so someone can push me, it is a cruel thing to ask one of my friends to try and push me, especially given that the terrain of the Ren Fair was very hilly, both uphill and downhill, and with many sharp side turns besides. So we were gonna rent or buy a wheelchair just for the sake of giving me some mobility so that we could still do things at the Ren Fair the second day. However, when we decided to run around town looking for a wheelchair, it was 8:30 at night because the Ren Fair had just closed, and it was also Labor Day, or Memorial Day weekend, or whichever the is it Labor Day or Memorial Day that is today?
Memorial
No,
Day is in the new year. This is Labor Day.
okay, okay, but in any case, it was a holiday weekend, so everything was closed. So we went to a Target. They didn't have anything, but they did suggest to us that there were two places we might get something. Um, and so we went to those, looking at those. They didn't have anything, and so in a desperate last ditch Hail Mary shot, we decided to go to Walmart, thinking if Target had some, Walmart might have some. But we're not from around Mannheim. I'm from, a tiny town called Lawrenceville, which no one knows and no one will ever know because it's literally two intersections and a side road. It is the kind of town people come from uh, to make something of their lives, or that they got washed back up in when they have failed to make something of their lives. But it's not really a place exactly. Um, and my friend Nick was coming from Wilkes-Barre because he had the good sense to move, and the original plan was for me to move with him, but that didn't work out. Anyway, so we go looking for a Walmart in this town we don't know. We get lost, and we end up having to basically make a turn. So we pull into a gas station to make said turn, and as we're coming out of the gas station to make said turn into an intersection, someone who was behind us took advantage of the moment when we were turning to try and get past us, and there was a collision on my side of the car. And long story short, I'm fine, by the way. There was no meaningful damage of any kind whatsoever in my case, if anyone's curious. But the car, the front right wheel was scraping against the framing of the wheel, and it did something to the steering mechanism, so the car was not drivable. So my friend Nick's mom had to come and get us on Sunday, which basically meant that we missed out on the entire second day of the Ren Fair. So yeah, it was an eventful weekend, but not exactly in the most fun of ways. I did, however, in the 3 hours that my scooter was working, managed to find yet another weapon cane, which I will show here if the camera works. There we go. This one, however, is a dagger cane, unlike my sword cane that I got there last year. But it was also just under half the price of my sword cane from last year, because my sword cane from last year was a really nice flamberge blade, which is a special French style of sword, and it was an antique, and the blade ran the entire length of the cane, whereas this one is a dagger cane, and it's also a fairly modern one with only a stamped blade as opposed to a forged blade. But yes, I did get a new weapon cane while my scooter was working. I also tried absinthe for the very first time, which was not something that I expected to like. I just wanted to try it to say that I tried it, but it turned out that I actually like absinthe, which is probably a bad thing for me because, well, absinthe will knock you on your ass, as per the Van Helsing meme. But that's something I didn't know. Anyway, that was my weekend. That was the whole lot of shenanigans. My only real regret, apart from obviously missing the second day, was I found these really nice gemstone dice made of malachite and I think brass in the numbering. And I almost bought them at the very last second, like as we were leaving the Ren Fair on the first day. But I thought, I'll think about it and come back tomorrow. And there, of course, was no come back tomorrow. So, grr. But
I had that internet, so that's why I decided to move it to Monday.
It ended up working out for me, though, so, we probably would have ended up having to move it to Monday regardless, but Brainstormer messaged me about it before I could message him about it, so, yeah, that's why we're doing it on Monday.
Anyway, moving on, because I feel like when it's over spring, my phone house, I will be here for an hour.
Well, I mostly I just wanted to show off my dagger cane that I got, but also I wanted to tell about the various shenanigans we got up to. So there were shenanigans. Unfortunately, most of them were not fun.
Yeah,
they were mostly just darkly fascinating.
I'm doing well, guys. Thank you for that. Anyway, shall we keep?
Yes, we shall continue. There is one last thing to do after we finish the Cameo article.
Yeah. Even SAG asked President Fran Drescher, who created and starred in the 90s sitcom The Nanny, reactivated her account this week. SAG Drescher charges $1,500 for a video.
Oh wait, so it actually was it actually is that Fran Drescher.
Yeah.
As in the nanny.
Yep.
Right.
I didn't know she was the president of the Screen Actors Guild.
I didn't know either. Good for her, though. Going up in the world, are we, Franny? Right.
Missionary man.
Hmm.
She married Miles.
Wait, Fran Drescher married the actor who played Niles?
No, I was making a ref. I was making no Niles.
Niles married Cece in the show.
No, I said Miles. No, it's Matt. Is it Maxwell? It's Maxwell, right?
Yeah, Maxwell Sheffield was the rich guy she married in the show, and then Niles the butler, Niles the butler wound up with CC Babcock.
Right. I got confused because
he's too young.
I confused the names.
He didn't spend enough hours as a child watching Nick at Night like I did.
No, I've watched The Nanny. I know. It's been a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been pretty evident in a lot of this podcast, not just this singular one, but the entirety of the whole thing, is I have kind of a terrible memory.
This is true. Also, in his defense, his childhood was a bit busy having a freaking Punisher backstory.
I wouldn't say that, but okay. Anyway, Josh. Drescher wishes, and I was making the joke because she's the president here, so whatever. Joke didn't land. I get it. Okay, I'm fine.
Well, it might have landed if the name snafu hadn't happened.
Drescher wishes fans speedy recovery or happy birthday with his fans at Rasking New York. Some videos on Cameo as casual as a short conversation on FaceTime. Other notable U.S. stars previously reactivated include Alyssa Milano, Diane Jackson, Chris Ward as Jenna McClain, and Melissa Benoist. Benoist? The actress who played Supergirl on the CW. CNN has reached out to the actor's representation comments. The average price for Cameo business, which allows the video to be used for commercial purposes, is $1,700. For non-business bookings, the average price is $70. That's a wide range of price points, and users can book session star Brian Cox for $689 or Santa Claus for $12. And that takes 25% cut. Ron said, better than not getting something. Fred Stoller, a perennial TV guest star whose credits include Gerard on Everybody Loves Raymond, to Fred the Swirling between the star, joined Cameo right before the site took off in the His requests on our site have ranged from announcing fans football picks to marriage proposals. Huh.
And as I said at the start of this article, even though no one was here to hear it, I don't really have empathy for the named actors because the named actors actually do. All of them live in, mansions in extremely upscale neighborhoods and parts of the country. So while I have a certain level of nostalgia for people like Fran Drescher, she has no need to supplement her income like this. And if it's a matter of, well, I live in, upscale Californian village or upscale Californian gated community, very simple solution. Sell the multi-million-dollar mansion and move out to the middle of nowhere, which would probably honestly be better for you because no one would bother you there, and get a reasonably sized shack that probably would be more affordable than the mansion you just sold.
I
Because,
think
well,
dollars.
90% of that cost is property values.
I mean, let's be honest, the housing market at this time is kind of fucked. So
I know, but they're also rich, famous people who honestly, realty firms would probably give them a house in like their best place just for the hype, just for the promotion. Because celebrities very often do get free shit just for the asking because of you know people having positive affiliation towards they're famous and or businesses like milking off of I did a deal with a famous person, etc. So yeah, no, just sell the 5 hallway 10 room mansion in the gated community suburbs of LA and get a nice luxury cabin in Montana somewhere or something. Pro- and here's the other thing. Here's the really really fun thing. A lot of celebrities actually already have that luxury cabin in Montana somewhere. They just have it as like a summer home or a winter home, whatever. And that's the other thing. If you're rich enough to have multiple places to live, you can afford to lose at least one of them. It's different if you're like a landlord or something and you're actually like making meaningful money off of your empty your not person your place for not personal use. But if you actually just have you know a cabin in the Catskills for summer homes or vacation or whatever, then sell your multi-million-dollar mansion and live in the vacation home for a bit. No harm will come to you. I swear. I I I I feel bad for being so callous, but yes, let's be real here. A lot of these people are rich enough and stable enough and famous enough. They don't really need to supplement their income. They just need to be smarter with the purchases they already have made or already are making.
total earnings for actors who joined the platform have ranged from $5 to $25,000. Daniel said. Many appearances are just enough for Postmates money, or said, especially when it's a slower season. Stoller, no, Stoller, sorry. Stoller said he's fortunate that he has only done a few streaming shows, which his low residentials are a certain part of that demand. As actors, we kind of wait for the mail for our residual check, he said. So we're used to it. That's better than not getting something. Along with the extra money, Stoller said he's able to not have anything such. I feel like I'm part of a little family. It's kind of sweet sometimes, Stoller said.
Again, 90% of the problem with the money you're making is where you're living. Because a large part of why the places you live are so expensive that you do need millions upon millions of dollars to maintain a living space is the property values. And many, many of you already have secondary homes you can move into if you absolutely need to. And given that, as Brainstormer pointed out, the housing market for normal people is shit right now, just be lucky that you haven't had to move back in with your parents or sleep on someone's couch. You you have not just one roof, a lot of you, but 2 or 3 roofs you can choose from. So pick your favorite or pick the one that's the most affordable property values place and sell the other two and live there. Because I will tell you something, a lot of you are rich enough to have paid cash for a multi-million dollar home And if you're rich enough to simply pay cash for a multi-million-dollar home with no mortgage, then you can sell that multi-million-dollar home and either buy, or more likely move into the one you already have, a cabin in, upscale Montana somewhere, or in the Catskills, or wherever the fuck.
Sorry, you are repeating. I understand.
Yeah, go ahead.
The Pope's blessing. Affecting the Pope's factors this summer, it's been a slow season for the site since Father's Day. The busiest time for Cameo is during the holidays when people buy celebrity videos. And the SAG-AFTRA has strict rules in place for actors, along with barring on-camera work. They can't participate in background acting, narration, stand-in, fittings, rehearsals, auditions, and promotion for work under contract, which sorry, which includes press tours, social media posts, and personal appearances.
Mm-hmm.
But in many times of the strike, the two parties reached an agreement allowing actors to count their cameo for business earnings towards health and pension benefits. SAG-AFTRA said 86% of the actors don't qualify for the union health plan, to $26,430. Cameo for business is something that literally has the Pope's blessing. Muhammad said about the deal, referring to that as the religious leader.
Again, I must point out that the actors, to whatever extent I have empathy for the actors, that I have empathy for are the no-name extra actors who are the nameless rabble in any given background role. I don't really have that much empathy for named actors, because if you're famous enough and rich enough to have a name that is out there, or a character that you're associated with, on the regular, then you probably have at least one home that is worth millions upon millions of dollars, and the largest part of your problem is you live in a place where $1 million doesn't stretch as far as $10,000 does everywhere else in the country, or everywhere else in the world. And that's the other thing. A lot of you are rich enough that if you need to, you don't even have to live in America, or even in the first world if you don't want to. You could go to a country where the currency is a lot less inflated, and you can live like a goddamn king there if you need to. Obviously, this doesn't apply to the no-name actors or the extra actors and so on, and that's why those people are the people I have empathy for. But also keeping in mind that our country, the country of America, doesn't have a single-payer healthcare system yet, and yet the union of actors is rich enough to pay for a community health plan. So, unless and until every single American has a single-payer healthcare system, I'm gonna press X for my empathy towards people who have a existing healthcare plan that's being paid for basically because they're part of a union. Because, well, there are a lot of us who don't have the luxury of a union. I mean, there's kind of Medicaid because I have a disability, and so kind of, but still, it doesn't cover everything. The disability bureaucracy is absolute bullshit. And once again, for those of us that actually struggle to pay for shit on occasion, I'm going to rebuke the people who only struggle with payment either due to their own choices, or basically on a whim or a lark make the wrong decision. Because when you actually have real problems, dear actors, um your empathy for people complaining about how good their life used to be and how they're slightly inconvenienced by a strike that they chose to engage in, it runs out but quick, is all I'm saying. Moving on. Oh shit.
Alright, besides incremental income, Cameo speaks to a shift in the way we view celebrities since the idea, the pandemic, sorry. Instead of glamorizing red carpet celebrities, fans turn to Instagram lives and interact with them, posting videos from their living room. Cameo helps further their brand accessibility. When the production stops or when lockdown, it's still a way for people to take their fame and build a business around it all. Well understood.
Again, you do know, person who wrote this article, that there are hundreds of thousands of actors who never make it big, never become a name, and basically make a living as extras in Hollywood movies and shows. Those are the people I have empathy for. If you are rich enough and influential enough to have your name associated with something, you probably are making at least enough to afford a mansion. If you cannot afford said mansion, it is because you are living in a place with fucktardedly high property values that require you to treat $100,000 like it's $30,000. And trust me, there are plenty of places in this country and around the world that you can move to where that $100,000 will behave more like several $1,000,000. But believe me, most people in the rural area I'm from subsist on 30 to maybe $40,000 a year, and those are the people who are considered fairly well off around here. So you're gonna have to excuse me while I get the world's smallest violin for you when you say, well, I'm still making millions upon millions of dollars, but the place I'm in this rarefied suburb of LA or San Francisco, in a place like that, $100,000 is similar to $30,000 everywhere else. Well, then go to the places where $30,000 acts like $100,000 and buy a fucktardedly large mansion there instead of in your um aristocratic gated communities then. Especially because a lot of you have multiple homes for vacations or seasonal living or whatever the fuck. So pick the favorite of the houses you already have and sell the other ones. And preferably go to a place where the production values aren't so ridiculously high that you need several $1,000,000 to even make rent. Moving on.
Yeah. Alright, so last thing of the night, which is on long, has been wanting to cover ever since it came out, but nevertheless always being swamped with other things. The official trailer for Good Omens Season 2, granted, I am fully aware that Good Omens Season 2 already came out, so this is also going to be a slight review as well as we're watching this.
Wait. It already came out?
I thought you already saw it.
I didn't see Good Omens Season 2. I thought you were asking about Blue Beetle.
I did ask about that, yeah, Good Omens 2 Season 2 already came out. Yeah.
Well, shit. Now I'm gonna have to spend the rest of my week watching that probably. Did all the episodes come out, or is it a week by week, episode by episode model?
I don't know why you're asking me, man.
Well, you're the one. You're the one with the capacity to Google things. If I try to Google things on my phone, StreamYard will throw a shit fit and throw me out of the call.
I assume it's all out.
Because I know for The Boys, Amazon does like a week by week standard TV show model, but I don't know if it's the same way with The Boy or with Good Omens.
I assume it's all out. It's been out for a while now, a few weeks or maybe a month.
Okay, then I am massively out of the loop. I'm gonna have to ask my mom for the Amazon password again, because every time there's a power outage or an electrical storm, um, a lot of my streaming services kick me out, and then I have to re-enter the passwords and things that I don't know.
Huh?
Yep.
What what's is Apple
Food stuff. Hmm,
Apple?
no.
Why not?
Because they literally only mention the Garden of Eden apple story in a couple of flashbacks. Um, the first thing that popped into my head was um, biscuits with pink icing, because because that was a fixture in why the mix-up between the child who was supposed to be the Antichrist and the child that Israel and Crowley wasted their time on for like 12 years happened in the first place. But that's not a very good reference, I don't think. So,
Is it, you know that?
hmm?
Banana?
Yeah, just the regular old banana, it seems. Shit, it's buffering. I can't see. I'm gonna have to disconnect and come back in.
Okay.
I'll be back. Be
Okay, yeah. Sorry about that. Mike. Well, yeah. Sorry about that, folks. My internet crap just don't left.
Okay, are we back?
Yeah, yeah. Sorry. As soon as you left, my internet crapped out.
Well, at least that's consistent timing. It's not convenient timing, it's not good timing, but at least it's consistent timing.
Yeah,
And it's somewhat humorously ironic.
yeah. We're back. We're back. Just as the intro says, it is live.
It's alive, it's alive.
Yeah. Um, uh,
Okay, but banana.
sec.
Hmm?
One sec. Banana.
I'm back. I can see that.
Have just got to room.
I'm interested to see what's gonna happen here because this the book which season 1 covered most of um was co-written by Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, and of course Terry Pratchett eventually got severe Alzheimer's and died a couple of years ago. So this season 1 was a love letter by Neil Gaiman, who did his first real take on show running, which apparently he hated. Um, to It was his love letter to the memory of Terry Pratchett. But this is going to be a version of Good Omens that was solely written just by Neil Gaiman. So one wonders what's going to be missing in season 2 now that Terry Pratchett isn't posthumously still holding Neil's hand. Especially because Neil Gaiman isn't even Neil Gaiman anymore. He long since lost his creative spark. Look no further than the Sandman adaptation. Although that might be an effect of him selling out to Netflix rather than him losing his creativity, but many other instances, such as the return of the Sandman comics, God help us, suggest to me that Neil Gaiman has lost his edge. Largely, I think, because in my metaphysical occult mind, um, I think because Neil Gaiman lost his friends on the other side that he never even acknowledged he had. So that's anyway. Moving on. Yeah, banana.
Something's up.
Up where?
Up. The Archangel Gabriel has disappeared.
I think he's gone to Earth.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good morning, officer.
Exactly. I'm a human police officer.
You spotted Gabriel? He's definitely not in the shop. It's just a zero fare.
And is the quirkiness? I don't know how to react to it.
I mean, I can't spot any major differences in the trailer that denote a lack of Terry Pratchettness.
I mean,
But
I've watched like the this world live action adaptation.
Mhm.
White Swords genuinely good, and I really enjoy.
Yeah, the live action ones are really good, and the animated ones are also pretty good for the most part.
But I mean, Death is voiced by Charles Lee.
In most instances where Death was adapted for the Discworld adaptations, he was actually played by Christopher Lee. Yeah.
Christopher Lee, not Charles. Sorry, Christopher Lee.
Yeah, but Hogfather was the one case where he was unavailable to voice Death. I kind of wish someone would go back through and dub in Christopher Lee's voice, maybe with AI, because I'm curious what Christopher Lee's voice would have sounded like delivering the humans need fantasy to be human speech, which, in fairness, is pretty close to what Terry Pratchett actually believed, but I also find to be nihilistic crap no matter how optimistic it is. So there's that. I don't subscribe to the theory that humans need lies to convince themselves to be good people. Nor do I subscribe to the theory that things that are fantastical are purely fanciful or fictional, as seems to be implied by that standard. But banana.
Hello, Star Town Gaming. We're just watching the trailer for Good Omens Season 2.
The traitor.
And his grumpy friend, Mr. Crowley.
The demon.
Oh, I suppose that explains the grumpiness.
Crowley, there's something urgent I need to talk to you about.
Oh, and of course, his assistant.
Hi there. Ah, Gabriel! What's he doing here? I don't know. What's happened to him? I don't know.
I'm curious what an archangel is going to do in the Good Omens setting. Apparently this was sort of always going to be the idea for the sequel they had. But of course Sir Terry rested in peace long before they could actually get that off the ground. That being said, he did successfully end the Discworld franchise on an actual ending before his Alzheimer's completely took his mind. Because, for those that don't know, apparently Terry Pratchett regarded Granny Weatherwax as kind of his self-insert character, because when he knew he was dying, he wrote Granny Weatherwax's death in the book The Shepherd's Crown as a final ending to the Discworld franchise.
Soka, Weissman, Blanket, as Soga. I assume he fell from, well, maybe not fell, but however he got to Earth, seemingly probably human-like or something. Naked, because that usually is how evil. I think the idea was more using lies to make people believe in the impossible, if not just the
Right, but the idea that things like again, I don't know if you guys have actually. I assume everyone except maybe Dragon Turtle has seen the clip we're talking about. Apparently, Sir Terry, in this case, in the voice of Death, believes that things like justice, mercy, and rationality are necessary delusions that humanity forces on the universe. I don't subscribe to that theory. There's a line in that speech that says, take the universe and grind it down to the finest powder and sieve it through the finest sieve and show me one particle of justice, one atom of mercy, and yet you all act as though these were real things, as though there is some justice in the world. To which my fucking response is challenge accepted, because I do think that justice, mercy, rationality, and all these things actually exist out there in the universe and aren't some kind of human confected nonsense that we trick ourselves into believing for humanitarian reasons. I think you could, with the right sieve and the right metaphysical materials, actually do what death is suggesting. And I think that's supposed to be at least part of the joke in the Discworld as well, because in the Discworld, abstract metaphorical things are very literal. But out of universe, out of context, and that's the other reason why it bothers me that to have Death say this, because in his universe you actually could do that. But it out of universe, this is Sir Terry advocating for effectively positive nihilism. And fuck that noise. There probably is some metaphysical particle that relates to justice or mercy or rationality or whatever. Like, these things exist independent of human agency, and I will die on that hill if I have to. Moving on.
Again, Carlos, doesn't he also say make it real?
Yes, but here's the thing. By make it real, he means convince yourself that it exists so hard that you can't imagine life without it. And that means, effectively, delude yourself. Implying that in order to believe in things like justice, mercy, or rationality, you have to delude yourself because these things don't actually exist. It's the classic morality and justice and rationality are subjective illusions that humanity tricks themselves into believing for their own benefit. And I don't believe that shit.
But I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you guys off, but I'm gonna be fully honest. I had a very terrible sleep last night, and I am operating on. I'm about ready to pass out, but that's all I can really say. I'd like it's not a bad conversation. I just would like to ask if you guys continue it somewhere else. Like, legitimately, I'm about ready to just slam my head into the desk and fall asleep right now.
Alright. Dragon Turtle will have to finish this conversation after stream because I feel like there is enough there for a conversation. Anyway, Pereira.
Alright.
Why did you come to my shop? You know what it's like when you don't know anything at all, and yet you're totally certain that everything would be better if you were just near one particular person? No, well, certainly not.
One thing I will say for this trailer, the song choice was good. I love this song.
I've never heard this song.
Oh dear Lord, you are young.
Or maybe I have, and I just don't know that. It's like one of those songs like you hear constantly, but you just never know the name of.
Yeah, it's one of those. Every day is getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like free sun. Yeah. Anyway, Banana.
To be honest, Darren Kill, that is my plan as soon as we are done here. Like, I literally just want to belly flop onto my bed and just sleep.
Yeah. So let's Banana so Brainstormer can get rest. For rest is good.
You know.
In trouble. We need to hide it from everybody. Heaven, hell. We do it together. Together. While we figure out what's actually going on.
I think I may have just started a war.
Oh, how about that?
And what day was it supposed to launch? Because
July 28th.
Oh, so only a couple days after my birthday. Shite.
To be fair, we did put off this thing for a while. Yeah, a little bit more or less. I don't know. Okay, now there is something.
Okay. Banana.
You're a demon. I'm going to get into so much trouble.
Well, let's make it worthwhile.
Anyway. Outros.
Yeah. Okay. With that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and
Shalom, let Brainstormer sleep and fuck off.